The Galactic Council had convened on the luxury station Xifra IV, a glittering hub in the Epsilon system that served as a neutral ground for diplomatic affairs. Alien dignitaries from across the galaxy sat in the Grand Hall, their voices hushed in tense whispers as the negotiation for the Xandra system's resources reached a boiling point. It was supposed to be a simple affair, a split of assets in exchange for peace, but the humans had other plans. Captain Jessica Tyler stood at the head of her delegation, hands clasped behind her back, watching the heated argument unfold between the Xinthori and the Valthari. The two species, long entrenched in the Council's bureaucracy, traded accusations of imperialism and exploitation, their voices rising in anger. Human representatives had been mostly silent, observing, waiting. And then, when the Kranthi delegation, in their haughty arrogance, declared that humanity should be thankful for whatever scraps they were offered, Tyler stood up. A murmur spread through the room as she rose, her presence commanding attention. The Xinthori, notorious for their towering size and reptilian visage, glanced at her with disdain. The Valthari clicked their mandibles in agitation. The Kranthi, whose race had once dominated the galactic stage, sneered as they expected another human retreat. But Tyler wasn't here to retreat. "I don't think you understand," she said, her voice steady but cutting through the room with the precision of a laser beam. "This isn't just another negotiation. We're not going to play by your rules anymore." The council fell silent. All eyes turned to her. The tension was palpable. "We've been the good guys for too long. We've given way to your demands, played your games, tolerated your self-serving rhetoric. But that ends today. We've bled for this galaxy. We've fought wars, survived Deathworlds, and built civilizations from nothing. And now it's time for you to give something up." She paused, letting her words settle over the room. "We're not here to negotiate. We're here to take what's ours." A stunned silence followed, before the room erupted into angry shouts. But Jessica Tyler had already made her point. The time for playing nice was over. The Kranthi had never taken humanity seriously. They were a species of calculating, hyper-intelligent beings who believed themselves to be the true architects of galactic order. To them, humans were little more than a nuisance, an impulsive, chaotic species that lacked the sophistication of older, wiser civilizations. They had tolerated humanity's minor disruptions for years, dismissing them as the rebellious quirks of a young race. But after Captain Jessica Tyler's declaration, something shifted in the Kranthi. It was no longer just a matter of diplomacy. It was an affront to their authority. Within days, the Kranthi issued an official statement, denouncing the human delegation for their insubordination, and warning that any further threats to the Council's stability would be met with force. They were quick to spread word of humanity's defiance to the other galactic powers, framing the humans as reckless children who needed to be disciplined. The Kranthi, believing their reputation alone would keep other species in line, thought nothing of it when they moved to enforce their will. What they didn't know was that humanity had already anticipated their response. In the dead of night, while the Kranthi were busy consolidating their influence, the human fleet, led by Captain Tyler, launched a surprise assault. It began with the disruption of Kranthi communications. Quietly and efficiently, the humans hacked their systems, sowing confusion and disarray among the Kranthi High Command. But the real shock came when Tyler's fleet, which had previously appeared underwhelming, unleashed a devastating new weapon, an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, that disabled every Kranthi defense system within 100 light years. For the first time in centuries, the Kranthi were vulnerable. The Kranthi fleet, caught off guard, scrambled to mount a defense. But it was too late. The humans, with their newfound advantage, struck swiftly and decisively. Their ships tore through Kranthi territory, attacking key military installations and severing vital supply lines. The Kranthi had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The retreat was swift and humiliating. Across the galaxy, news spread. The Kranthi had been bested by the humans. It was a moment that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. The Valthari were nothing if not shrewd. Known throughout the galaxy for their devious trade networks and complex web of political maneuvering, they had always preferred to sidestep conflict through clever deals and behind-the-scenes influence. When they saw the tide turning against the Kranthi and the sudden rise of human power, they knew they needed to act quickly. The Valthari were not a species that liked to lose their position, especially not to a brash, unpredictable race like humanity. They didn't see the humans as conquerors or soldiers. No, the Valthari saw them as potential partners. If only they could be brought into the fold, their talents for disruption and innovation could be harnessed to further the Valthari's goals. So, as Captain Jessica Tyler's fleet basked in the glory of their victory, the Valthari sent an emissary, Senator Thelus, on a diplomatic mission to reach out to the humans. It was a delicate balancing act, the Valthari ambassador knew. They needed to convince the humans that their future lay in cooperation, not conflict. The meeting was set in the heart of the Valthari homeworld, in a sprawling crystalline palace, where ancient trade negotiations had taken place for millennia. Tyler's fleet arrived with impressive fanfare, but Tyler herself remained cool, detached, aware that the Valthari would attempt to sweet-talk their way into a deal. When Thelus offered lavish gifts of rare metals and technologies, Tyler didn't even glance at them. "Nice try," she said bluntly, "but we're not here for trinkets." Thelus, taken aback, adjusted his long, segmented antennae. He cleared his throat. "Captain Tyler, this is about more than mere resources. We can offer you trade routes, safe passage, a permanent seat on the council." Tyler cut him off with a sharp gesture. "What we need is power, not promises." The Valthari leaned forward, trying to charm her with smooth words, but Tyler was already a step ahead. "You've been dealing with the Zikari in secret, haven't you? Helping them hide their war crimes and trafficking." Her eyes locked onto his. "I have evidence. I could make sure the whole galaxy knows. Your precious reputation. Gone." Senator Thelus froze, his smooth exoskeleton rippling with fear. His calculated smile faltered. "Here's how this works," Tyler continued, her voice growing cold. "You'll help us. You'll give us a seat at the table. You'll release your hold on the systems we've claimed, and you'll stand by us when we go to the council. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been doing behind closed doors. No more tricks, no more games." It was a delicate negotiation, but Tyler wasn't bluffing. The Valthari, once the masters of deceit, had met their match. The news of humanity's triumph over the Kranthi and their newfound alliance with the Valthari spread like wildfire across the galaxy. As Captain Jessica Tyler and her fleet cemented their control over key systems and trade routes, whispers began to stir among the galaxy's most dangerous species, the Deathworlders. The term itself had been coined by the Galactic Council as a derogatory label for the most savage, unpredictable races, those who lived on planets where survival was a brutal, unforgiving test of strength. Deathworlders were feared. The Ugrin, towering behemoths capable of ripping through armoured ships with their bare hands, the Alix, silent, deadly assassins who could kill with a glance, the Charin, whose toxins could melt flesh in seconds. These species had been marginalized by the Council, seen as little more than weapons for hire, useful only when the Council needed muscle to fight its wars or defend its borders. But now, with humanity's rise to power, the Deathworlders saw an opportunity, a chance to take back control from the Council, and perhaps even to rule the galaxy on their own terms. The first overture came from the Aelix, an enigmatic species whose motivations were always unclear. They reached out to humanity with an encrypted message, a rare gesture of diplomacy. It was signed by their enigmatic leader, an individual known only as Shadeknight, a name whispered in fear across the galaxy. The message was simple. We see you, human. We join you, or you join us. Together, we can reshape the stars. Tyler was cautious. She had heard of the Aelix, of course, but they were notoriously unpredictable, bound by honor codes that often clashed with human methods of warfare. Still, the timing was too perfect to ignore. The message came at a time when the Council was reeling from humanity's audacity, and when the Deathworlders had begun to question their status as pawns. A secret meeting was arranged on the remote moon of Nethar, where human ships hovered in the shadows, awaiting contact with the Aelix. When the Aelix finally arrived, they didn't land on the surface. Instead, they appeared in the sky, descending in sleek black ships that reflected no light. Shadeknight, clad in a hooded cloak of shifting shadows, spoke to Tyler through a voice that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We have been watching," Shadeknight said, his tone cold and steady. "The galaxy is weak. The Council is crumbling. We are offering you power, not as allies, but as equals." The words were a challenge and an invitation. In that moment, Tyler realized something crucial. The future of the galaxy wasn't going to be decided by the Council anymore. It was going to be decided by those who had always been left on the margins, the Deathworlders, now united under the banner of a human-led coalition. A coalition that would reshape the galaxy in their own image, starting with a single word that resonated with all the power of a storm: revolution. With the formation of the Deathworlder coalition, led by humanity and the Aelix, the galaxy was plunged into an era of open conflict. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of peace and order, began to unravel as the long-suppressed species of the galaxy rose up in unison against the Old Guard. The Xinthori, the Kranthi, the Zikari, all the ancient powers that had ruled unchallenged for centuries were suddenly on the defensive. Captain Jessica Tyler stood at the heart of it all, the calm center in a storm of chaos. With the Deathworlders behind her, she began orchestrating a series of strikes that would not just shake the foundations of the Galactic Council, but shatter them. Her first target, the Zikari Empire, a sprawling ancient civilization that had enslaved countless species under the guise of benevolence. The Zikari, with their sophisticated fleets and vast star systems, had been the undisputed power in the galaxy for millennia. They had never faced a threat like humanity, however. Under the banner of the Deathworlder coalition, the humans launched a series of lightning-fast raids across Zikari-controlled space. Tyler's fleet, bolstered by the Aelix's stealth technology and the Ygrin's devastating ground forces, attacked Zikari colonies with surgical precision, hitting key military and supply points before retreating into the shadows. The attacks were swift, brutal, and impossible to predict. The Zikari were caught off guard, their normally impeccable defences floundering under the relentless assault. Tyler had been studying their tactics for months, and she knew exactly how to exploit their over-reliance on rigid strategies. The humans' unpredictable tactics, mixed with the sheer ferocity of the Deathworlders, tore through Zikari systems like wildfire. In a climactic battle over the planet Velocron, one of the Zikari's prized worlds, Captain Tyler's flagship Asterisk, Indomitable Asterisk, led a direct strike on the Zikari command center. The battle was a bloodbath, but when the smoke cleared, the Zikari fleet lay in ruins. The humans and their allies had delivered a blow that the galaxy would never forget. The ancient empire, so proud of its invincibility, had been humbled in a single furious campaign. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had become the catalyst of a revolution. The Galactic Council's days of dominance were numbered, and the galaxy's future would no longer be shaped by the ancient powers, but by those who had always been underestimated. In the wake of humanity's decisive victories, the Galactic Council's once unshakable authority teetered on the edge of collapse. The news of the Zikari's defeat sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and for the first time in generations, the Council's most powerful factions found themselves scrambling to maintain control. The Deathworlder coalition, led by Captain Jessica Tyler and supported by the fierce Alix, Ygrin, and other savage species, had proven too formidable to ignore. The old powers, those who had dominated galactic affairs for centuries, could feel their grip loosening. Desperation set in. A summit was called. The Council's most influential members, those whose seats of power spanned entire star systems, gathered on Hekros Station, a heavily fortified orbital platform at the galaxy's core. The Xinthori, the Kranthi, and several other old allies of the Council stood united, each quietly aware of the crisis at hand. But none more so than the highest-ranking Council member, Chancellor Valendar of the Kranthi, whose race had suffered the most humiliation in the recent conflict. Valendar's eyes were sharp as he addressed the gathering, his voice laced with venom. The humans and their Deathworlder allies have torn through our defences like paper. We cannot allow this insurrection to continue. They threaten not only our power, but the very order of the galaxy itself. The room buzzed with tension, but an undercurrent of fear ran beneath the harsh words. The Kranthi, once the galaxy's most formidable species, had been shown their limits. The Xinthori, whose fleet had been decimated, shifted uncomfortably, their massive forms casting long shadows. Their pride had been wounded. The Valthari, who had only recently aligned with humanity for fear of being exposed for their criminal dealings with the Zikari, exchanged uneasy glances. "We need to crush them," Valendar continued, slamming his fist on the table. "Now, before the coalition becomes too powerful." The Valthari's senator, Thelas, rose cautiously. His voice was a murmur, but it cut through the heated arguments like a knife. "We cannot fight them in open war," he said. "The Deathworlders have no strategy. They fight without rules, without boundaries. If we attempt to meet them on the battlefield, they will wipe us out. We must use diplomacy, or we risk losing everything." Tyler's rise had ignited a spark in the galaxy, a spark that now threatened to burn the Council to the ground. But as the galaxy's most powerful species gathered in desperation, they failed to see one critical flaw in their plan. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. The war had only just begun. The brutal reality of the war began to set in. The Galactic Council, once an unchallenged symbol of peace and order, had become a fractured institution, its old alliances torn apart by internal strife and the unrelenting advance of the Deathworlder coalition. The Council's attempt to crush humanity and its allies had failed spectacularly, and as the pieces of the old order fell away, something new began to take shape. Captain Jessica Tyler, emboldened by her triumphs and the fierce loyalty of the Deathworlders, knew that their next move would not just be another battle. It would be the moment of total upheaval. The Council had underestimated the humans' resolve and ingenuity, but now it was clear that the Deathworlder coalition had more than just military strength. It had a vision for the future, a future in which they, not the ancient powers, would decide the course of the galaxy. Behind the scenes, the Coalition's influence spread like a shadow. The Aelix, with their masterful manipulation of covert operations, began infiltrating key positions in Council-controlled systems. The Ugrin, brutal and efficient, razed entire sectors where resistance to the Coalition's new order was strongest. The humans, ever the wild card, brokered strategic alliances with smaller systems that had long been overlooked or oppressed by the Galactic Council, promising autonomy in exchange for loyalty. Soon, entire sectors of the galaxy were caught in the crossfire, not between the Deathworlders and the Council, but between the fractured factions within the Council itself. The Cranthi, still reeling from their defeat, tried to cling to their former power, but found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The Xinthori, humbled and divided, began to see the writing on the wall. They could either adapt or be swept aside. For all their bickering, the Council's once unified front collapsed under its own weight. Tyler had known this would happen, and she had prepared accordingly. The death knell for the old regime came in the form of a final, catastrophic blow, a coordinated attack by coalition forces that crippled the Council's central military hub in the Votran Expanse asterisk. The attack was swift, precise, and devastating. The heart of the Council's military might was torn apart in hours, leaving the Council scrambling, leaderless, and on the brink of collapse. The galaxy was no longer the same. The old powers had lost their grip on the future, and the Deathworlders, with humanity at their helm, were positioned to take over. A new era had begun. The Treaty of the New Order was signed under the flickering lights of the once imposing Galactic Council chamber, now a shadow of its former grandeur. The vast hall, once filled with dignitaries from every corner of the galaxy, now echoed only with the voices of the victors. Humanity, the Deathworlder coalition, and a few loyalists from the crumbling council sat at the table, their futures intertwined in a new, unprecedented agreement. It was a peace forged through fire and blood, a peace that would reshape the galaxy. Captain Jessica Tyler stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding and resolute. Beside her, representatives of the Aelix, the Ugrin, and other Deathworlder species took their seats. For the first time in history, these species were no longer outcasts. They were the architects of the new galactic order. The Cranthi and Synthori, humbled and defeated, sat across from them, their eyes full of bitterness and grudging respect. They had been forced to recognize the inevitable. The galaxy was no longer theirs to control. Tyler looked around the room, her gaze sharp and calculating. The ink on the treaty had barely dried, but the implications were already clear. Humanity had gone from being an unpredictable rogue species to the undisputed leader of the galaxy, with the Deathworlder coalition firmly at its side. The new political structure, crafted by Tyler and her allies, was designed to ensure that power no longer resided solely in the hands of the old guard. Systems once dominated by the Council would now have more autonomy, with an emphasis on mutual cooperation and strength. "We don't just rule this galaxy," Tyler said, her voice calm yet filled with the weight of history. "We've built something stronger, something that will endure." With the stroke of a pen, the galaxy's future was irrevocably altered. The Council's era had ended, and the age of humanity had begun. Across the galaxy, news spread. Humanity and the Deathworlders had taken their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. For the first time in millennia, the balance of power had shifted. No longer would the old empires dictate the terms of existence for the lesser species. Now, strength and unity would define the new order, and the galaxy would never be the same. As Tyler looked out into the void of space from her flagship Indomitable, she felt the weight of her decisions settle into place. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, there always were, but for the first time in history, humanity and its allies had the power to shape their own destiny. The stars, once distant and indifferent, now seemed within reach. The age of humanity had truly begun.